Well, thank you for having me here. I mean, this is a amazing opportunity. It's funny because we are like at the other part of the world. Here is like noon, 12 noon. So just I mean, your introduction was very, very great. I'm just from Venezuela. That is the only thing. I'm from Venezuela, but I am living here in Colombia. So don't worry. Um, and yes, I'm very, very active in community. I really love like giving talks, workshop, and women empowerment is a few things that I really enjoy. So in this opportunity, I'm going to talk a little bit about end-to-end testing with Cypress in Monorepos environment. So, well, I'm going to talk a little bit about a few parts of this in a few seconds. So, but to start, let me change. Okay. To start, I'm going to start talking a little bit about how we, I mean, we start coding and testing nowadays, right? Because one of the main issues that I see when we are like creating apps and then we are going to start testing is that, well, we start coding, but we start creating feature, creating application then, but when we want to start doing testing, it looked like a really hard to test. Why this happened? It's because well, we noticed that our code is a really hard to test. I mean, because we have to do, I don't know, like refactor, or we saw that we with function are really difficult to understand and test. So what happened? We start coding, then we want to do tests, then we noted that it's hard to do tests. We noted that we have to do refactor, and then, well, we don't do tests. So basically, well, we don't start doing any kind of test. So in the other hands, oh, well, in my experience, like teaching a little bit about testing and mentoring people, I noticed that it's very difficult, like, know what I have to test. I mean, what exactly I have to test. What is this for me, or this is for another developers, or this is for the business? So I'm going to talk a little bit about it. And this is a little bit about how my talk is structured. The first is about a big picture about testing. We have a few kind of testing, so I'm going to mention a few a little bit. Where I'm going to mention about what is end-to-end and what is Cypress. Then I'm going to mention a little bit about what we should test. Then an overview about how Cypress is already integrated in Monorepos with NX. I think I missed NX word here. Um, Final comments or recommendation in this. So a little bit about the different kind of testing. So we can start like from the bottom to the top and mention about the few catch typos or type errors that we have in our code. For this, we can use like linters or IDs or another tools that we can integrate in our application. Then we have unit testing that is basically what we use or we are trying to use in our projects. Unit testings are very focused on function or isolated functions and functionalities in our code. They are easiest, cheapest, and fastest. Then we have integration. In integration, we have code with dependencies like API. And finally, we have end-to-end testing that I'm going to mention today. End-to-end is about test all full flow of our application and interaction like an end user. So for example, authentication flow are very important flow in our application. like payments are creating, I don't know, a post depend of the application. So why should we test? Because one of them, customer satisfaction and maintainability. I mean, if we do test, we can like give warranty about our code and is work fine for us or for other developers. Product quality. I mean, if we use testing or we use tests, um, basically we don't have to like test our code manually, so we can just run this test and we just like I don't know, we don't have to spend so much time like setting up tests or testing our application. Then basically save money. Why? Because I mean, this part is a little bit funny because sometimes when we are developing a product, the client or the company think that we have to spend so much time doing testing. But if we start doing tests from the beginning, we don't have to spend so much time like testing our application, or the QA team doesn't have to spend so much time on this. So basically save money. So what end-to-end is? Well, for that, I want to mention a little bit about how manual end-to-end testing works, because it's basically what we do the most part of the time. So this is a small flow in very common in application. Is about authentication. So first, we have a functionality like login, so we can have a success path or like login success, and our unhappy path like invalid credential. Also, we have other functionalities like register, and we can have a happy path, our unhappy path, and then so on. We have another functionality like forgot password, change password, etc. So basically, when we do like manual end-to-end testing, well, we start like running our application and start creating a user and start trying to create the same another user with the same username or login, or writing invalid credential and something like that. But then we have another functionalities, and our application is bigger and bigger, and it's very difficult for us like test all these functionalities, right? And because, well, today we know what are the functionality of our application, but tomorrow we don't really know about it because, well, the team could be a little bit big, they are developing another features. So for that reason, um this is one of the, I mean, like inefficient ways to test our application. One of them is, well, more time testing functionality than expected. And we are human, we made mistakes. So don't, sometimes we are testing things, but we are not really sure if it's working fine or not. And in resume, well, it's inefficient. So for that, what is the solution? But, well, basically automated tests. I mean, if we have all of these like tests or functionalities of our application automated, well, it's easier for us, and we can spend so less time. So let's talk about a little bit about Cypress. So what is Cypress exactly? Is it's a front-end testing tool. Basically, it's run on the browser. It's open source, and is for QA. Is QA and developer friendly. That means we don't have like, if you are a QA, or if you have in your company there is like a QA team, it's very easy to work with Cypress because the code or the command are very easy to use. It's work for any front-end framework made with JavaScript, of course, like Angular, React, Vue, and just vanilla JavaScript, is work fine. This is a little bit about the homepage of Cypress. This is the URL cypress.io. And this is a little bit how it looks like the result when we are testing with Cypress. I'm going to show in a few minutes how it works. But first of all, one of the most difficult part of creating a test is how to start or how I can start doing tests, right? So for that, I this is just like a few example of how it is like a code in Cypress, and if you can see, it's pretty similar to unit testing with just. I mean, we had a it, and we can put that like a name or description about what this test works or do. And then we have a few steps, right? So in unit tests, when if you work with unit tests before, we have like a structure for this kind of test. But in end-to-end testing, we have some similar like a step to start creating one specific test. One of them is, first of all, very simple, visit a web page. In the example that I mentioned before, we can like visit a web page like login, register, forget password, dashboard, etc. Then we have to query for an element. I mean, we can use like the button, an input. In this case, I'm using an input, a button. And if you can see here, and I'm using um, attribute name data site, which is like one of the recommendation from Cypress to identify like uniquely an element. In this case, is go to register, and I am validating that contain a test. Then interact with that element. So in this case, I'm using click. We can use like input or maybe the scrolls, another kind of event that we already know in JavaScript and web. So, and then we are going to assert about the content of the page, on the page. In this case, I'm just validate that the current path is a slash out slash register. So that is pretty much like the structure on a basic test. And we can start like using this step to start testing in with end-to-end testing with Cypress. So I'm going to talk a little bit about assertions. Um, um, I didn't really like specify some assertion in the presentation because I think when we have like we are a little bit sure about what we are going to test, is most easy, or is easier like start looking for like what kind of command or assertion or function I need to test, right? But I think it's good to know that there is a few assertion like um some like this, like it's okay, it's not okay, equal, not equal, and the structure, the syntax is pretty much similar to testing with just another testing tools. So you can go this URL and you can find like a lot of assertion that we can use. It's a function, it's not right, etc. Um, and also we can test a thing like styles or CSS. We can test if an element is has visibility, or has a value, or exists, or the state of that element, etc. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about comments. So this is basically the command to install Cypress. I think it's pretty easy to install, that we know. And this is how we run Cypress in our project, in Angular project, right? And ng end-to-end and the name of the application that we create. And then we can add the flag watch to start like watching in real time all the changes. Um, when we set up we set up the Cypress in our application. This is a little bit about the folder structure. We can see that we have like a feature folder, integration folder, plugins, and support. So let's talk a little bit about one of them. So feature are commonly used to represent data, just like we want to test, for example, an user. So we need that credential, username, and password. So we can like put in this example that JSON. Of course, we can change the name, but it's very common use a JSON extension for this. We can put in all this information that we need to use to represent data. Then we have integration. That is, here is where all our test files are. I mean, we have to, or we can create like every single file with a spec extension here. Then we have plugin. Cypress have a few plugins that we can integrate with our application. And then we have support, where we can use like or put on the reusable code here, or custom command, because we can create our custom command in this case. So let's see a little bit about how Cypress looks like in an X environment, or in a monorepo environment. So it's pretty similar, to be honest. I mentioned before that we have this command, so we can just use like NX end-to-end. In this case, if you have just one application, web application, you can there is a start running by default. And we can use the same flag here, like watch, so we can see the change in real time. So let me show you a little bit about the code. Okay. Well, this is a pretty small test, but basically here I'm just testing about when you start in an application, in my application that I already have here. I want to test the redirection. In this case, I'm testing if I click on the button. This is a name in Spanish. Olvidé mi contraseña. I can click on them, and then I'm going to spec that the path name is out and forgot password, right? So the same I'm doing here to test another link in this case. So if you can see here, this is very similar to unit testing with test and another testing tool. We have a describe, we have a before each that we can like run before one of before each test of this, and we can run it with this. I think, I don't know if you can see here, but I'm just running NX end-to-end is dash watch. Well, I'm going to show you first the results. Maybe I can try to increase the letter. Okay, and you can see this. Okay, I can like increase the font size here. Basically, this is how looks like. Well, this open another tab here. So well, that happens so fast, just like almost 3 seconds. We can even notice. Maybe if I run again. Oh, sorry. Mm. Well, he start like testing all this one, and you can notice that it start like navigating for all applications. So then we can see like each step that the testing path. I mean, we can see how it looks like here, how it looks like here, and then the result of or each of them. And I can, and I think I'm coming here, but I think it's not increasing my phone here. Well, I'm coming on other test that it should fail just for test. And we can notice that he almost, I mean, I'm going to retry. He start retrying the test just for make sure that it doesn't work, but then the result was fail. That is what I expecting in this case. But it just like to show how Cypress retry a test because it's one of the feature of Cypress. Um, okay, let me go back to the presentation. So let's talk a little bit about CyberFuture. One of the in time travel, what I show you before, like we can like select each step and see what is happening and how the application looks like. Then we have debuggability. We can use Chrome the DevTools for this. We have real-time reload with, I mean, if we are um, modifying our code, we can see the change in real time. We have a screenshot and video. This is very useful for QA or product team because they can share of like um, where is failing our application, and the retriability that I mentioned that I showed you before. Another feature like aliases to reuse code. We can like basically create we can use code to create it and reuse it in other kind of tests. For example, if we are creating a post or this kind of functionality that are really repetitive on our application. So what we should test? That is one of the common question that I heard. So in this case, for end-to-end testing, we must to test like main flow for the business. So what is this exactly like? For example, authentication is one of the main flow that we need because if the user can log in successfully, they can start using the application, right? So this is a little bit example. And other kind of flow like payment, or if we are, I mean, if you have an application about, I don't know, an airlines, one of the main flow are the booking flow or reservations, something like that. So for this kind of part, or where when we are integrating end-to-end testing, is very useful if we have like a good communication with product team, or we know exactly what is very important for the business to start like testing for that part. We have to test happy and not happy. I think that the right word is unhappy, happy and unhappy path, because we all the time when we are using an application or when we are testing like manual testing, we just try or test like the happy path. So it's very important when we test the unhappy path because we have to know how our application, what is the behavior of an application when something fail, right? So for example, if a user can do login or can't create a post or whatever, we have to show, for example, a notification, or if the result of an endpoint is 404 or not found, we have to show, I don't know, a little message or a whole screen, new screen. So it's very important in these cases. Main flow on the apps maybe are, this is like the last part because maybe it's not like the it's not like business. I mean, we are not talking in this case like about the what is important for the business, but it's important for the application, like logout or maybe search or table or manage information, like what is very important in this application. So we can start like testing with main flow. Some consideration. Well, JavaScript is the only supported language. It's very important to know that it's not server-side language. Not for server-side language. I mean, in the moment that I start doing or using Cypress, um, doesn't can implement in server side. So I don't know if that's changed right now. Is doesn't have multi-tab support. Limit iframe support. Some recommendation. Well, we have to prioritize the end use. We have to create tests easy to write. I I believe that if a test is difficult to write is because we have to make a refactor, or we are testing what we don't have to test. I mean, sometimes we do like complicated things, so you must to is have to be easy to write, readable, reliable. I mean, we have to create tests that we can trust, basically, and not intend to test apps you don't control. This is very important because sometimes we are, I don't know, testing like a third part dependency. So in that case, we are like starting using or integrating like integration testing. So it's another kind of test. This is a little dresser. Danke. I don't know if that is a pronunciation. Danke. Thank you. Gracias.